Okay, well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, my name is Kathy Hall, and I am the Executive Director of the Nebraska Statewide Independent Living Council. I have a few housekeeping things to go over, then we'll get started. I just want to acknowledge Melanie Davis from the University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, who will be helping me in the background for the entire series. She'll be putting stuff into the chat for resources for people. These sessions have been put together by what has become known as the Nebraska Disability Advocates. This group includes representatives from 22 different disability organizations in Nebraska, and it's growing every day. They're in our Dropbox that Melanie will give you the information for. There is a list of keystrokes, presume available in the Dropbox. Depending on the device you're using, your toolbar will be either on the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen, and that's where you can do things from. There will be 2 sign language interpreters that will be spotlighted for the people that need them. And I would like to thank both of them for being here. We are also providing which is captioning. If you need to turn that on, click on the little arrow beside the CC button on your toolbar and enable subtitles. And then you should be able to see the captioning. If you have any questions for the presenter, please use the Q&A button on your toolbar. Continue to use the chat to have other conversations, and Melanie will be putting resources into the chat. We're in the process of changing all of the recordings. For right now, all the recordings are on the Statewide Independent Living Council website. Melanie will put the link in the chat box. However, we are in the process of expanding where the videos are being kept, and you'll be able, eventually, if everything works out, a number of groups of the disability advocates will be sharing links on their website for these recordings. Plus, Melanie is going to be helping us to clean up our Nebraska Disability Advocates YouTube channel. So, but for right now, it'll be the Nebraska Statewide Independent Living Council. And and hopefully I should have it up by the beginning of next week. At this point, I am just going to turn this over to Sage. She will be your moderator today. And I'm out of here. I'll see you at the end of this series. Bye.
Thank you, Kathy. So welcome everyone. We're glad you're here and you decided to attend. Today, we're going to talk about transportation in Nebraska. And to start off with, we have Mike Owen and Carrie Roos from Nebraska Department of Transportation. And I'm going to let them do their own introductions, and then we'll have one other presenter after them. Go ahead.
Thanks, Sage. How's my audio coming through? Good?
Yeah, it's coming through good.
I'm going to share what's there. How does that share look? Did I get to the full screen?
Yep, that looks great, Mike. Thanks.
Okay, I did it again. That's amazing. Well, let me start off by introducing myself. I'm Mike Owen, as Sage commented, and I'm the roadway design engineer for the NDOT. I've worked for the NDOT for many years, and I've quit telling people how long I've worked for NDOT. But I started when I graduated from college many years ago, and I've worked in our district, one of our district offices in Norfolk. I worked in our right-of-way division and project development, and I've worked in roadway design a couple of times, and so now I'm back in roadway design. Carrie Roos is going to follow me with a presentation on transit. She's from our planning division within the NDOT. So here's my agenda for today. A picture of our Department of Transportation there, our Lincoln office. I'm going to talk a little bit about our organization. I'm going to talk about roadway design and focus on sidewalks and pedestrian access. I'm going to talk a little about a few projects that have come across my desk and just talk about some of the things that we think about as we develop projects. And then I have some closing comments. So just to start off, Nebraska Department of Transportation, I call us a centralized DOT. We do have 8 district offices. I show those on the map there on the right. Our district offices operate at a local level. They do all the maintenance and operations of our highway system. They repair them. They mow our right of way. They solve the problems at the local level. They also manage our construction projects that come out of our centralized office in Lincoln. And they also manage our permitting work. If we have a developer or a landowner that wants to do work on our right-of-way and needs access to our right-of-way, we have a permit process that the district's offices manage. Lincoln has our, like I described there on the slide, it's our centralized support, our administrative offices. Carrie and I both work in Lincoln. Carrie's in the planning division. I'm in the roadway design division. We also have a bridge division, a traffic division. We have a project development division that is involved in environmental processes and several others. We probably have a staff of about 700 in our Lincoln office. So just this is our state highway map, and talk just a little bit about our transportation system that we operate and manage. We have 10,000 miles of highways, 3,500 bridges over the state. We of course manage the interstate system, which goes through our state I-80. We have expressways, for example, Highway 81 between Columbus and Norfolk, and 275 between Omaha and Fremont. We have state highways like Highway 6 and Highway 34, Highway 2, all these highways that we manage as part of our state transportation system. There's also systems managed by the counties and by the municipalities. And so we work with them closely because their systems integrate with ours, of course, and intersect ours. For example, 72nd Street in Omaha, that's a city street that's managed by the city of Omaha. Waverly Road in Lancaster County, that's a county road. In fact, all the mile roads, most of them are gravel, but all the mile roads throughout our rural areas, those are county roads that are managed by the counties. I'm going to drill down just a little bit deeper. Upper left shows kind of a blow up of our transportation system, the state highways between Lincoln and Omaha. You can see I-80 there in green. Of course, that's a state highway that we manage. And then the other state highways, you see US 77 there are in red. And then if you look at the Omaha area in the bottom right, again, the green is the interstate system, and the red are the state highways that intersect and go through the city of Omaha. The state highways that aren't interstate or freeways that go through the city of Omaha through an agreement are managed, or they're operated by the city of Omaha. So they're maintained by the city of Omaha. So snow removal and any kind of work there at a local level is done by the cities. And that would be the case with what I call first-class cities or greater. Those cities, first-class cities, are those cities that have a population of over 5,000. Generally, we have agreements with those first-class cities and greater, where they maintain the state highway system through the community. I'm just going to talk a little bit about our budget. The numbers there on the left are numbers from our 2020 budget year, which is just kind of closing out, but those are the ones that are maybe the most relevant to me because we're just finishing up that fiscal year. We have three sources of revenue generally. Our total revenue for 2020 was $990 million. The state revenue was about 50% of all of our revenues, and most of our monies from on the state side are generated from motor vehicle tax, sales tax on cars, and B&A there is the Build Nebraska Act, which is a 1/4 cent sales tax that was introduced in 2012. The B&A dollars are targeted toward our expressway system and identified projects when that bill was passed in 2012. On the federal side, we get about 40% of our budget from US DOT or federal highway, $434 million. And then on the local side, about $22 million of our 2020 revenues came from the local side. So each time we do a project through a first-class city, those cities that are greater than 5,000, if we do an improvement through that community, they pay part of the cost. And so that's where that local revenue is generated. It's generally about 20% of a project cost through a first-class community or larger. I focus a little bit on roadway design and some of the pedestrian issues. I help create our policies and our guidance, and most all of our policies and guidance are generated through documents. AASHTO is a coalition of states. All of our states are members of the AASHTO, and AASHTO, together with all the other states, we generate many kind of guidance documents. Also, US DOT provides guidance in federal highway, and so we use information from them also. But to focus on pedestrians with each of our different projects, we do build curb ramps, and with all of our projects, those that are needed adjacent to our highways as part of the improvement, we try to facilitate and connect the community sidewalk network. That's our goal. And so each time we have a project adjacent to or through a community, there is quite a bit of coordination that we have with the community. It's our goal, of course, is to connect to the community sidewalk system. We do have we call a transition project right now, where we have an inventory of all of our pedestrian intersections with our state highways. And so we have a plan or a strategy to improve those up to the most recent criteria. Our strategy is if we have a planned project, of course, our strategy is to update those curb ramps with our projects that we have planned. If we don't have a project planned in the area, our strategy is fix the worst ones first, and then any kind of locations that aren't part of a project, and then would be next. A lot of the communities, for example, Lincoln and Omaha, both have sidewalk strategies also, and so the larger communities, we let them take care of the sidewalks. And so we're focused more on some of the smaller communities as part of the strategy. We have each time we do an improvement project, we put it in one of these categories: either maintenance, resurfacing, restoring, or rehab, which we call a 3R kind of a project. And then the third kind is new and reconstruction. And when we put it in one of these categories, that helps define our guidance or guides that we use and the criteria with which we design a project. Maintenance kind of projects are ones where we're trying to maintain our assets. We put back our highways to the condition that they were originally designed. 3R projects are probably 80% of our work, and when you're driving through the rural communities, when you're driving rural highways, when you see a project, generally those are a 3R project where we're overlaying the highway, fixing our bridges. That's where we spend most of our time, maintaining our assets. We do have some new and reconstruction projects. I would say that's about 10% of our program. We do those through many of our communities. As the pavement deteriorates, we build new and reconstruction projects. Also, for example, we have a new US 30 project between North Bend and Fremont, which is an expressway. That's a new and reconstruction project. The South Beltway in Lincoln is a new and reconstruction project. When we do a new and reconstruction project through a community, of course, we're building new pavement, we're building new sidewalks, curb ramps, lighting. Oftentimes we're building storm sewers. And so those are projects that have the most significant scope involved in those projects. When I talk about sidewalks, and oftentimes when I meet with communities, there's often a discussion about state statutes. And so I wanted to share this with you. This is State Statute 39-1339, which talks about our responsibilities with respect to the highways that go through communities where there's most often the pedestrian traffic. So on in communities that are first-class cities or larger, our responsibility by state law is to maintain the traveled way. And so the responsibility of what I call appurtenances, sidewalks and steps and driveways and retaining walls, those are actually the responsibility of the community. The bullet 2 there, cities that are second class and villages, so those are cities that are smaller than 5,000. We also, not only do we have the responsibility to maintain the traveled way, we also have the responsibility to maintain the parking areas through the communities. And so that's different than first class cities. They're responsible for their own parking areas that are adjacent to our highways. But again, in all cases, the cities are responsible for the sidewalks, steps, driveways, and retaining walls. But oftentimes there's a blend there. We do a coordination. In fact, some of my guidance says that we do part of it because our goal is to connect our sidewalks to the community sidewalks and then find safe places to cross our highways. I'm going to thumb through a few example areas that have come across my desk recently where my staff have questions. and on how this is handled. In fact, we get questions sometimes from the community and staff at our district field offices. This is 160th and West Maple Road in Omaha, and you can see in the center of the I don't know if you can see my mouse. Maybe you can. I'm looking at the center, kind of the 160th as it comes into West Maple Road. You can see the developer built the sidewalks partly, and then they stopped the sidewalks. And in the bottom left of the slide, I show a blow up there. They actually did some landscaping work there, and they have a sign that welcomes you to the neighborhood, and it has their neighborhood sign there, but they've stopped the sidewalk. And so we have a project that's going through West Maple, and we're repairing the pavement, and then we're going to do an overlay. And as part of our work, of course, we're going to build curb ramps and try to connect to their sidewalks. But by state law, we have minimal responsibility. Actually, the community has the responsibility to connect the sidewalks. So in the case of this project, we've worked hard with the city of Omaha, and it's been our goal to, as we go down West Maple Road, to make these connections to where the developers had stopped the sidewalks there. And so we're trying to make sure that we connect those sidewalks that are just kind of stubbed out. I'm going to drop down where we are just finishing up plans in Columbus, Nebraska. This is 23rd Street, which is US 30, and it runs east-west through Columbus. I call this project McDonald's to Walmart. It's about 2.5 miles long, but you can see the photos that I've taken there. There is very few pedestrian facilities along this corridor here. It's two lanes in each direction with center turn lane. There's a lot of commercial businesses along the highway there. Quick food, Arby's and McDonald's and such. But as part of our project, so we are building new pavement, we're building new sidewalks, new lighting, new storm sewer, and so we're pushing the parking back. It's impactful to the businesses, and so we're trying to do that in a way that we've coordinated with the businesses and the community. But as part of our project, we'll build back sidewalks on this new and reconstruction project. I have some examples of finished projects. This is Ashland. I have a couple pictures there, certainly not quite as urbanized as the Columbus picture that I just showed, but this is Highway 66 that goes north-south through Ashland. You can see that we built new pavement, new sidewalks, curb ramps, detectable warning pads. It's a little bit hard to see, but in the upper right, you can see there's a business there with a parking lot, and so we built what I call barrier curb to try to protect the sidewalk and protect it from people parking on the sidewalk. The bottom photo, I think, is looking south in Ashland, and it shows what I call bubble outs there, where we protect the parking area, but we make the distance a little bit shorter for the pedestrian as they're crossing the highway. This picture is in Wayne, Nebraska. This is Highway 15. This is a couple years old, but we work with the community. We used some colored and printed concrete to help delineate the sidewalks and delineate the intersections. There's the imprinted concrete is between the back of curb and the sidewalk, and then also kind of provides some kind of aesthetic color there at the corners. You can see the ornamental lighting there that we've also added. And we've bumped this out. You can see we've moved the pedestrians out a little bit to shorten the distance that they'd have to cross the highway. This project is in North Platte. This is a mosaic display that we're getting ready to present to the public. I think we're going maybe next week to present this to the community, North Platte, the city, and then to the public. It's not a great photo. The aerial behind it just didn't come out real well, but it shows this is Highway 83. It's one-way pairs in North Platte from the interstate through a lot of the town. So this is a think this is the southbound pair. And it shows the red is the new pavement, 3-lane southbound. You can see that we have a new sidewalk is there in yellow with the curb ramps there shown. So this is typical of an urban project that we would build. This is my last slide before closing, and this is Axtell, Nebraska. This is in what we call District 7, and I just pulled a photo from a small town. We have so many projects that go through small communities, and these are challenging because you can see that there's just a smattering of pedestrian facilities in town. You can see some of the sidewalks. There are none adjacent to our highway, none that connect to the highway. Sometimes we have swimming pools, or we have a Casey's store, or we have a park that's adjacent to the highway. And of course, we want to make connections there, and we want a safe crossing. But in this location, in the bottom left, you can see I've taken just a snapshot of what it looks like there. And there's a business there, but it's not one that attracts very much pedestrian traffic. And so we would work with the community when we did an improvement through town, but it is a challenge. It's a challenge to get the community to help build pedestrian facilities when they don't recognize a pedestrian need, and that's a challenge for us when we go through any small town. Is there a need for sidewalks? Is there a need to connect? Who pays for it? Given the state statutes, each small town is a challenge when we go through a small town. And just in closing, of course, we have our state highway system that we're maintaining. There are 93 counties that have transportation systems, many more communities that have transportation systems. And so we're all trying to work together, and we coordinate with them all the time. That's our goal, is to coordinate sidewalk access and to find the safe places to cross the state highway system at the appropriate locations. And just my last bullet there is, if in your community, if you're challenged to get from your home or your location to any of your destinations as a pedestrian, let us know. We can work with the community and try to find the right solution. That concludes my part of the presentation.
Mike, we have a couple questions if you'd answer those before we have Carrie speak.
Sure.
All right. So one question is, how do you determine the angle of the ramps in relation to the streets? This is a large issue. As I use a wheelchair, I have encountered this issue many times.
You know what? I'm going to go. I have many designers within my division, and when we build them, we want them to look like that. We want them to be squared we want them to point to where they're supposed to cross the highway. And so that's our goal. Each location is somewhat unique, and each designer that I have is somewhat unique. But when we describe our criteria and we lay out our guidance, our plans describe that this is our goal, to square them to the street and send people, straight into the crosswalk. I know we don't always get that, but that's our goal. That's what we communicate. And of course, then you got many more communities that build them. And I know sometimes they build them where they point you right, probably to the middle of the intersection. That's not what we teach. That's not how we guide people. We guide them to build them like that.
Okay,
Mike.
then question, and it's about ramps also. And it asks, who is responsible for the ramps for accessibility in smaller communities?
I would say that if it's adjacent to a state highway, the state of Nebraska is responsible for it. In a community that's less than 5,000, generally they have less dollars. In fact, when we have right now, we have a program of projects that we're putting out to fix curb ramps, to correct curb ramps, build in the right criteria. So if you have a location at a state highway that's not right and doesn't work for you and is a barrier, call us. Call NDOT.
Say, this is Kathy. I have a question for Mike.
Okay.
Back to the
Yeah.
previous question. Do you have specific guidelines for your designer on the slope of the ramp? Yeah, how many degrees can it drop at any given time? Because I'm in a power wheelchair and I have scraped the bottom of it on some ramps with my wheelchair.
Kathy, we have standard plans that have maximums and provide guidance. And so we do. I don't know. I don't remember what the slope is, but we do have standard plans that we use. Of course, we provide a plan to the district, and they make them fit in the field. I'm sure that sometimes they don't build them the way that our standard plan guides them to, but we do have standard plates that guides our designers and guides our field staff on how they should be built.
So if a ramp that in some small town is really off in not meeting the guidelines set forth by the ADA in the accessibility guidelines, do we contact you or what do we do?
You could contact me. If it's adjacent to a highway, we will try to take care of it, or we will try to work with the community to get it taken care of. I know that sometimes I get letters from people in small communities where they describe situations within their community where they're just not meeting criteria. And those are the responsibility of the community. If they're within the community and within their boundary, they're a city responsibility. If they're adjacent to our state highway, then we would make them our responsibility. So if they cross our state highway, we would make them our responsibility.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike. That's all for the questions for now. There is a comment on there, and I think it's really similar to what Kathy was saying. It says the ramp a lot of times meets the street at an angle that stops you from using the ramps completely. So just reach out to NDOT for help.
Carrie, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think your picture's showing now.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this afternoon and inviting us today. We really appreciate the opportunity. I am Carrie Ruth, the Transit Manager at the Nebraska Department of Transportation, and I have been at NDOT for 11 years and Transit Manager since 2013. The Nebraska Department of Transportation, formerly the Department of Roads, is tasked by state statute to coordinate and improve public transportation across the state and to also provide technical assistance to transportation providers. So I like to tell people that NDOT does more than build roads and culverts. We're also very involved in public transportation. So in that role, we pass through federal and state funds to providers. The largest program that we manage is what we call the Section 5311 program, which supports rural public transportation. We receive approximately $9 million a year from the Federal Transit Administration for this program, and that funding can be used for operating expenses, capital purchase of vehicles, and construction of transit-related facilities. We have a much smaller program, the Section 5310 program, which supports specialized transportation for the elderly and disabled. And in the rural areas of the state, we receive approximately $500,000 a year. We also receive a separate apportionment for the City of Lincoln for this program. And this funding is used for the capital purchase of ADA accessible vehicles. We're also very fortunate in the state to have state funding for public transportation, a little over $6 million a year. And that funding is used for operating expenses and also capital purchase of vehicles. And we use the state funding to match our federal dollars. This is a picture of the interactive map that we have at nebraskatransit.com. And this shows you where public transportation is available across the state. So in the red counties, there is public transportation available at least countywide. We have many agencies that have a multi-county service area. The yellow dots represent transportation in various cities across the state. And sometimes that transportation is limited also to just within the city limits. And the black dots represent destinations across state lines. For example, Kimball County Public Transportation provides transportation to Cheyenne, Wyoming, Loveland and Fort Collins, Colorado. And up in the Northeast region, Cedar County Public Transit provides transportation to Yankton. So 86 of 93 counties, oh, I jumped ahead. So 86 out of 93 counties across the state do have some level of public transportation available. So just to give you an idea of the size and scope of our rural program, we currently support 54 agencies across the state. They operate 375 vehicles. And in fiscal year 21, these agencies provided almost 500,000 passenger trips, traveled 3.2 million miles. And we also have currently 14 federally funded transit facilities in the state. And the picture on this slide is of our largest transit facility in Kearney. It's 27,000 square feet, a $4 million project that was completed in 2014. Some of you may be familiar with Nebraska's Olmsted Plan. The mission and vision statement of the plan is people with disabilities are living, learning, working, and enjoying life in the most integrated setting. So the goal of the Olmsted Plan is to create a framework that keeps people with disabilities integrated into the community rather than siloed in institutions. And as you all know, transportation can be a barrier to people with disabilities living within the community, which is why the Nebraska Department of Transportation is part of the Olmsted Plan committee. So goal 5 of the plan is Nebraskans with disabilities will have access to affordable and accessible transportation statewide. So some of the strategies and the outcomes in the plan for transportation, we want to increase the number of passenger trips in rural areas across the state. You can see comparing fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21, passenger trips actually were reduced. That was primarily due to COVID-19. We had several agencies that closed completely for several months and many other agencies that limited their transportation for medical purposes only. So we expect that number to rebound this fiscal year 22. We're doing a little better on the intercity bus trips. There was a decrease in fiscal year 20, but it has rebounded nicely for fiscal year 21, over 32,000 passenger trips on the intercity bus network in Nebraska. We also intend to launch a statewide trip planning software. And this is software that will allow you to input your origin and your destination in the state. and it will show you all of your transportation options to get from point A to point B. We're currently reviewing the different software options that are available, but we have a tentative implementation date of June of 2022. Also in 2021 and going through 2022, we will deliver 60 ADA accessible vehicles to the rural public transportation providers. And we were able to utilize $4 million in some of our COVID-19 relief funds that were provided to NDOT. So this project is 100% federally funded, and those local agencies don't have to pay anything for those 60 ADA accessible vehicles. NDOT also has a statewide mobility management project. And this project has a goal of coordinating and improving transportation options for Nebraskans. We want to improve coordination, we want to foster education and awareness, and we want to increase the transportation options that are available across the state. Some of the priority projects for the mobility management project is to increase intercity bus service between Lincoln and Omaha. There is some intercity bus service between Lincoln and Omaha. It is not robust, and the schedule is not convenient for most people. We did complete the feasibility study for this project in May of 2020, and the study includes potential routes and schedule for that increased service. We hope to launch intercity bus service, new bus service that would connect Grand Island, Hastings, and Kearney. And that feasibility study was completed in June of 2020. And it also includes potential routes and service schedule. And in January of 2022, we will launch new fixed route service in Norfolk. Norfolk already has very robust public transportation, but the fixed route will just give citizens an additional mode of transportation to choose from. And the map at the bottom of this slide is of our intercity bus network in Nebraska. You can, again, find this map on our website at nebraskatransit.com. And if you hover your mouse over the colored lines on the map, it will show you the name of the providers for this service. NDOT also administers a statewide van pool program. In 2017, NDOT contracted with Enterprise Commute to bring a statewide turnkey van pool program to the state. So a van pool is similar to a carpool. It's a mode of public transportation comprised of a group of commuters who agree to share their ride to work in a vehicle large enough to accommodate a minimum of 7 people. So it's carpooling in a larger vehicle. So Enterprise Commute is responsible for providing the vans that the commuters can lease. They provide 24-hour roadside assistance, liability insurance. They schedule the vehicle for maintenance, and they also have a program called a Guaranteed Ride Home. So many people are reluctant to join a van pool because if they get to work and there's a family emergency, for example, and they need to leave, they think that there's no way that they can get back home because they're part of a commuter group. But Enterprise, in that circumstance, Enterprise guarantees that they will have a vehicle available that you can use to get you home if there is a family emergency and you need to leave work. NDOT provides program oversight, and we also use federal funds to subsidize each van pool $400 per month per van. A van pool is not a demand response or reservation type service. You can't call someplace and get a ticket to a van pool. Again, it is a group of commuters that agree to share their commute to work. The typical cost of the van from Enterprise is approximately $1,000 a month. Of course, that varies by the type and the size of the vehicle. NDOT provides the $400 a month subsidy, and the remaining cost for the lease is then split amongst the commuters. Accessible vehicles are available. It states in Enterprise's contract with NDOT that they must provide an accessible vehicle if one of the commuters has a verified disability, and they have to provide this vehicle at no additional cost to the commuters. If you want more information about the statewide van pool program, please visit our website at nebraskatransit.com, and at the top of the homepage, you will see a link to the statewide van pool program and also to our mobility management program. You can read, for example, the feasibility studies that I talked about earlier, the intercity bus feasibility studies. And this is a picture of a transit facility currently under construction in Cedar County, hopefully completed later this month. Any questions?
Thanks, Carrie. So there is one question in the box, and it says, and this was posted before you provided the information about the van pool, just so you're aware, but it asked, have you looked at transportation within cities? We have no options in West Omaha.
So our enterprise commute rep has met with a number of businesses in the Omaha area, and currently her focus is in Blair, because the economic development office in Blair has contacted her about some businesses in that area that are interested in the van pool program. But if there is a need, certainly my contact information is, well, it's here, it's also on our website, and the enterprise commute representative contact information is on our website. So if there's a need, please contact us, and we will try and get with the businesses in the area to talk to them about the van pool program.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I don't see any other questions right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You guys got a couple thank yous in the chat box also, just so that you were aware of. Thank you for sharing all of your information.
Thanks, Sage.
Yep.
I think we're back to home screen, correct?
Yes, you're right. Yep. Thanks. And so
Thank
the next presenter that we have is Annie Woodruff, and she's from Monroe Meyer Institute. And we heard about the things that are available in Nebraska, or what things are like in Nebraska. And Annie has done a lot of research on what things are available outside of Nebraska. So I'll let her introduce herself and talk to you about that information.
Hi, first of all, it says the host disabled participant screen sharing. If someone could maybe change that. But while they're working on that, I am Annie Woodruff Jameson, and I am actually a physical therapist here at Monroe Meyer. And so as a physical therapist, a really important part of my patients being physically active is their ability to access the community. And so as I was doing more and more clinical work here and talking to more of my patients about just what a struggle it is to get around in the community, we had some time available on our USAID grant, which is the University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disability, to explore some more systemic issues that affect the people that we work with. And so I took on transportation as one of those issues. And so I have had a chance through our national network, through that program, to just listen to what's going on nationally, because this is a problem that affects a lot of people's lives really profoundly, and it is happening on a national scale. And so different communities have had some opportunities to explore some different options. And I've had a chance to hear about what has worked for some other communities, what has not worked, and just trying to look into the feasibility of things that we could do on a local and a state level to try to address some of these gaps in service. So let's see if this works. Oh, it's going to work now. Okay. I'll just do my screen. All right. Let's see. Okay. It should be working. Let me know if there's any issues. So it was really nice to have the introduction that Mike and Carrie gave, or all the information they provided, because it kind of gives you a sense of how vast and complicated the transportation system is. I just read the other day that if you consider all of the local and federal entities at all the different levels that actually affect people's ability to access transportation, there are 44,000 different levels of bureaucracy basically that affect it. So these are some of the ways that people across the country have learned to work within that system. I just wanted to give a little background on paratransit, which is transportation specifically for people with disabilities and the elderly. Just in case people weren't aware of it, it is an unfunded federal mandate through the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that means that they say that you have to do this, but we're not going to pay for it, essentially. And so the parameters outlined in the ADA are that paratransit must run within 3/4 mile of a fixed bus route, and it must not cost the rider more than double the cost of a bus ride. So in Omaha, which is the community I'm in, what this looks like for us is that your service is really limited to be only amongst fixed routes. And as someone put in the Q&A already, fixed routes in Omaha don't really go west except for a few exceptions of about 132nd Street. So there's a lot of people in West Omaha who are kind of up the creek as far as that goes. And then it's limited to the operating hours of the fixed bus routes. So if you have a need like a late Saturday night food craving, you're not going to be able to access paratransit. You also have to schedule rides ahead of time, and you're limited by drivers and vans, which when you're coordinating all this just means there's a large window of time for pickup and drop off. So when you factor all this in, national average cost for a one-way trip using paratransit is $29, which is a pretty astronomical cost for a one-way trip. So people have had to find ways to this creates a lot of gaps basically. So the first solution, which I think has a lot of promise on a statewide scale, is a volunteer driver program. So volunteer driver programs exist in California, in Michigan, and in Massachusetts is the third state that have implemented these. And most of these so far are on a smaller scale, but they are expanding further and further and hoping for a statewide presence eventually. So in a volunteer driver program, riders with disabilities who live in the area can register. And then the programs that manage these volunteer drivers programs sometimes add other parameters if they're worried about having a huge number of people that more than they can serve basically. But really you just verify that you have a disability is the main category. So then the rider with the disability finds their own volunteer driver, and then the program provides funds for the riders to reimburse their volunteer drivers. And so most of them do like 55 cents a mile up to 200 miles a month. And then the program reimburses the driver. So they don't reimburse the driver. The program and the driver pretty much have no contact. So the person with the disability, the rider, keeps track of all of their trips, their mileage. They submit it to the program pays the person with the disability, and then that person pays their driver. So in that way, there's not a lot of liability for the program, which is how these programs are able to operate basically. And then using this system, the average cost of a one-way trip is down to $5.38. So this is not like a solution that's going to solve everybody's problems, but I do think it could fill a gap because there's no restrictions in where you can drive. So if you needed a ride from Omaha to Lincoln, you could do that. If you needed a ride over to Iowa, you could do that. There's a lot of restrictions otherwise in where you can go, like, we can't go past this route, we can't go past this county line. But this program eliminates that. It also puts the person with the disability in control. So you can say, like, I want to go here at this time. Maybe it's outside of the time that the fixed bus route runs, but that's okay. And it also gives the opportunities for family members who maybe are just doing all this stuff already to be reimbursed for at least a little bit of their time and the cost of the maintenance of their cars. So I was trying to run this program here, but because we're a part of a big university, there are just a lot of restrictions to working with volunteer drivers that a smaller organization might not have. So if anyone listening to this feels really inspired and wants to try to take this project on, or knows of an organization that might be a good fit, the way that it's run in the other states is they apply for the 5310 funds that Carrie was talking about, and then you fundraise to do the 20% match that is it's attached to that 5310 funding. And then they're able to provide this reimbursement service for the volunteers. So this is the first really promising solution that I found. And I think that, yeah, it could fill a gap statewide for us. Are there any questions about that before I move on? And the next one I can look.
So someone put a question on here and it says the city limits restriction is frustrating. For example, are there options to get from downtown Omaha, where I live, to Papillion so that I could get to a ball game at Warner Park?
I mean, you could take Uber or Lyft, but or a taxi, it'll cost you. So no, there's not, you couldn't take paratransit there, if that is what you're asking specifically. And that's part of the frustration. That's where I think a volunteer driver program could fill a gap. And they have some good outcome measures. I think there were, in the people that have used this program, 30% less trips to the ER. In the participants that used it over the course of a year, because they were able to more easily get to and from their routine doctor's visits. So there's some pretty powerful statistics that say that this program is really valuable in quality of life.
There's another question in the chat. It says, how do drivers get trained?
They don't. That's part of this, is that the organization has no contact with the drivers other than to say that they submit a note saying, like, yes, I am really driving for this person, so we know they're actually a person that exists. So they're just like your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, your family, and you are responsible for telling them what you need and where and when you want to go. you're the boss in this program.
Okay, there's a couple others. The cost of insurance for the vehicle seems to be a problem. Our local company has had to raise the rates every year to cover the insurance. This puts a ride out of the reach for disabled people on fixed incomes. How do volunteer driver programs overcome this?
Well, so in this program, your rides are free. So you are not paying anything to be a part of this program. You just have to register with us. And since I shouldn't say us because this program does not exist here. You register with the program, and then the program has federal funds. So most people, like I said, use 5310 funds, and then they combine that with a local match, usually philanthropic, and then they pay you so that you can pay your drivers. So yeah, there is no cost associated with this program.
Okay. And then there's another question that says, how do volunteer drivers register with this program?
They don't. So once you have, once you, the rider, has identified who you want to provide their service, we just have the program just has the rider submit something that their driver has signed that just said, like, yes, my name is Ann Woodruff and I am driving for Sage. Sign my name. Sorry, I can see these questions too. The vehicle is just managed by the volunteer driver, so it's their own personal vehicle in this program. Anything else? I thought I saw a hand raised. Megan Walls, did you raise your hand? Oh, okay. Well, if something comes up, I can move on. But yeah, I thought this could be an exciting option if anyone feels like they maybe could take it on or knows someone that would. Contact me, please, because I've done a lot of legwork on the back end. I had it all ready to go. So I think this could be cool. All right, so the next example I just wanted to talk about is in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They saw that their fixed route system was not working specifically for their citizens with disabilities, but also just kind of in general, people weren't using it. They got a lot of complaints about the times that the routes were running and the locations of them. They didn't really, just people weren't utilizing it, and they were losing a lot of money on it. So they did a person-centered planning session where they brought in a lot of people who were using both paratransit and the fixed routes, and talked to them about what they liked, talked to them about what was working, what wasn't working, what would be ideal for you. And they ended up scrapping this is a trial, I should say. So they are trialing this new system of microtransit. They are scrapping their fixed route systems on certain days and instead using microtransit. And I just put the process of how the microtransit system works here. So you use an app, you request a ride. It's on-demand response, that term that Carrie used earlier, demand response. And then you receive your estimated pickup time and location. You go to a virtual stop, so there's not an actual bus stop, but you'll have a virtual location at an intersection, and then your smaller bus will come pick you up. So in this program, they're not using their big fixed route buses anymore. They're all smaller, accessible buses. You pay your fare. I believe they had it cost the same as their fixed route rate. And then you you're at a drop-off point, which is again probably like 1 to 3 blocks from your destination. And yeah, so rather than having this big fixed route system, they just have this smaller microtransit system that's demand response. They, like I said, are in the middle of trialing this, so we don't know the results of it yet. But especially for smaller communities, this might be another good option as opposed to having big fixed routes that people aren't using as frequently. Any questions about that? I think I see any. Okay, we'll go on to the next one. Oh, this one, I wasn't sure how much time we would have. I can try to show this video. Transit training is something that a lot of communities across the nation have put in smaller grants for, and it can be valuable, I think, in local communities for people with cognitive impairments who just don't need a little extra learning or repetition to feel comfortable using the public transit system. Anytime we can get more people on the fixed route systems, it's really ideal because you really have more, you can move more freely in the fixed route system when you know how to do it well. So transit training, it's just about what you would expect. But I'll just play this so you can get a little idea.
Hi, I'm Karen Alexander, the Managing Director of NJ Tippett Rutgers, the New Jersey Travel Independence Program. NJ Tippett Rutgers teaches people with disabilities and older adults how to use public transportation. Our mission is to increase the self-sufficiency of people by empowering them to use public transportation safely and independently.
I am so delighted. I'm happy. The lady at Rutgers, she's the one that gives me this boldness to ask for her training. I'm not shy anymore. I request it immediately and they give it to me.
Participants will learn, among others, how to read schedules, plan their trips, pay their fares, taught by seasoned professionals in a one-on-one environment or small groups. During the one-on-one training, the instructor will ride along with the participant, guiding them until they are confident to travel independently. The small groups participate in class activities and escorted transit trips to popular local destinations, such as the mall, museums, and downtown centers. Currently, NJ TIP is offering remote individual training and virtual group field trips. In-person training can be provided on buses and trains for essential trips. NJ TIP trainers follow CDC guidelines along with Rutgers University and NJ Transit policies to reduce the risk of exposure to the COVID-19 virus.
New Jersey Transit, the NJ TIP program, changed the lives of many seniors here in Westwood, but for me personally, it made such a huge difference. I'm a big chicken. I don't like to travel anywhere by myself, and I had gone on the NJ TRIP training with seniors from Westwood, and the next day, for the first time, I traveled by train to go to Hoboken to babysit for my grandson. It made all the difference in the world. I knew what I was supposed to be doing because of the NJ TIP program, so thank you.
Upon completion, participants feel empowered to travel on public transit safely and independently.
Well, the training has taught me how to be more confident. It gives me the spirit, to want to go out and do things more. And I don't have to depend on someone to pick me up and come back and get me. And because seniors like to be independent and travel and go as they choose.
For more information, contact.
All right. So I think transit training could be something great on a local level. I know in Omaha, for our paratransit system is called Mobi. And for the Mobi applications, there's a box on there that says, I have had the opportunity to learn more about taking the fixed route system. and they said they did an audit recently and only 1% of people who submitted MOBI applications had checked that box. So there really aren't any opportunities in Omaha. We actually are working on a grant here at Monroe Meyer to create a training module to learn how to use the fixed route system. So that's another thing that it could be an option on a smaller local level. Statewide, things vary so much place to place that it would be a little tougher. Any questions about that? It's pretty straightforward, I think. So this next solution is working with competitive employment agencies, and some agencies I think that are actually not competitive employment as well. Some workshops that do more outings during the daytime programming use this as well. Some places, this specifically has happened in Ohio that I know of, but they make agreements between their companies and Uber or Lyft, whatever they have locally, to provide transportation to and from work sites or community outing places, or the workshop itself, if that's the organization, if they are like a sheltered workshop where these people are going every day. And then if the agency determines that the cost for the agency provided ride is more expensive than the way that Lyft or Uber can do it, they present it to approval at the county level, and then the agency is able to use Lyft Concierge once it's approved to make sure their clients are still getting to and from their jobs or their outings or whatever safely. So they really like this option because it also puts more control in the hands of the people that they serve, rather than just sitting waiting for the agency to come pick them up and bring them to whatever they're doing. They can order their own ride and get there, and it ends up costing less in the long run too. So this is something that's a little more complicated because you have to have the competitive employment agencies or whatever agency it is really initiate this, and that's, everyone has their own priorities, I guess, and sometimes it's this, sometimes it's not. So just something else interesting that's out there, that if you are an agency or associated with an agency, it would be something to consider. And then autonomous vehicles, I just wanted to put a note in here about that because some accessibility issues are already coming to the surface with them. So we really need to advocate on a national level for as these vehicles are being designed and contracted for, that they need to be created. Accessible vehicles need to be created as well. So right now, it's not happening at the rate that it should because it's just companies trying to get them out as fast as possible. And it's way more expensive to go back and retrofit a vehicle and make it accessible than it is to just design an accessible vehicle from the start. So it's going to be important to advocate for that. The other thing you have to be aware of is places creating legislation that would be restrictive towards people with disabilities using it. So for example, in Nebraska a few years ago, there was legislation put forward and it never got out of committee, so it ended up not being a big deal, that but someone had put forward a bill that said that you have to have a licensed driver in an autonomous vehicle. And so for people with disabilities, that really would limit the amount that you could use autonomous vehicles. And also it doesn't really make sense because, for example, there are 5 levels of autonomous vehicles, and for the most complex ones, which are level 5 autonomous vehicles, there are not even any driver controls in there. So even if you have a licensed driver in those cars, they can't do anything because there's no human controls. So it's just important to kind of be on the lookout for that and say, like, if this passes, could a person with a disability still be in an autonomous vehicle, even though they don't have a driver's license? Because that group, people with disabilities and the elderly, are some that are most likely to really benefit from autonomous vehicles. And so we want to make sure that we're not creating either vehicles that are not accessible to them or situations where they're not allowed to access them. And then I just had one more video. It's basically just a commercial for this white paper on autonomous vehicles, but this paper has a lot of good information in it. So I thought I'd share.
You may be used to seeing self-driving cars in sci-fi movies, but the future is closer than you think. Lack of access to transportation is a key obstacle to full life participation, especially for the 20% of Americans living with disabilities. 11 million medical appointments are missed each year because of transportation barriers, leading to greater healthcare expenses later on. But this new technology could be a serious solution to the problem. According to the last Ruderman White Paper, in collaboration with SAFE, self-driving cars could lead to $19 billion in annual healthcare savings. 2 million more people with disabilities could become employed thanks to reliable transportation. We could see up to $1.3 trillion in overall savings through fuel and accident avoidance. And furthermore, as the future becomes the present, let's make sure that our technology, our laws, and our regulations keep people with disabilities in mind. Go to rudermanfoundation.org to read the full Ruderman White Paper on self-driving car technologies, the impact on people with disabilities.
Like I said, it's kind of just a commercial for that paper, but it has a lot of good information in it, and I did put that in the Dropbox. I thought I was one other thing about that. I can't remember. I think that was the last thing I had, though. Does anyone have any questions or comments or anything? All right. Well, thank you. It's fun to share what I've learned, and I hope that we can implement some of this here.
Thanks very much for sharing, Annie. And I don't see any other questions coming in. So I'll turn it over to Kathy. You're still muted, Kathy.
You probably were better off anyway that I was muted. Anyway, I want to thank everybody who was presented here today. We learned a little bit about what our options are, what we can start pushing for. And I think that's important because we've always said we need more transportation. But if we can't bring forth ideas of what that more transportation would look like, it makes it really hard for other people to come up with the ideas. So hopefully this has given you some ideas. Anyway, in October, we will be celebrating Disability Employment Awareness Month. So we will not be having the session on the first Thursday of that month. Instead, we will have sessions on October 26th, 27th, and 28th. All having to do with services available in Nebraska around employment These sessions will be from 1 to 2:30, just like these other ones have been. Everybody that's registered today or has ever registered for one of the educational series will be receiving a flyer for this session by email and with the link to how to register. If there is ever any topic you would like to see us do, please either put in the chat or feel free to contact me at Kathy NESILC.org, or you can contact any of the organizations listed on the flyer. You will have to register for each individual day. And I'm hoping people will join us as we celebrate this very important month coming up. Thank you very much for everything everybody's been able to do with this. Have a good day.